You're currently tackling Mandarin as your second language after Japanese. I'm right behind you. Japanese got me way too interested in kanji. I look forward to hearing your journey about Mandarin. I am following in your footsteps. Japanese Mandarin is after Japanese. After that is Spanish, but I've explained that a couple more times. I'll have to explain that a couple more times later. Why those in that particular order. Mizu, how is the Mandarin going, by the way? JD. Mizu ga, yes, Mizu ga nomitai desu. Soto ni ikimashou. Fair enough.
Erika-san, 早く席に戻りましょう.
It's gonna be a while though before I start Mandarin. Although I'm going from something that is most alien to me, that's still present in my life, to something that is most present in my life and least alien to me. So Japanese, Mandarin, Spanish in that order. If you had the balls, you'll jump into Cantonese. Why not? Go talk with your friend and learn some Cantonese. So far, Mandarin has been really cool. Some of the simplification of the kanji have thrown me for a loop. For example, oh, because you're doing a simplification. Yeah. I've heard about that. That's a very unique problem, depending on how deep you've gone into Japanese. Yeah, because of the simplified Chinese, in order to, as a starting place for learning. Yeah, before you go into, if you want to go into traditional Chinese or traditional Mandarin, right? Yeah, understood. Wait, what do you say? Danielu-san, 早く席に戻りましょう. 外でコーラ、yeah. But I want to drink outside. I want to.
私の好きな歌が聞きたいです。
私の好きな歌が聞きたいです。Okay, sure. I want to hear my favorite song.
席に戻りますか?
席に戻りますか? Okay. Oh. We are returning to the seats. That's phrasing. Oh yeah, no worries. I'm illiterate in Mandarin. Yeah, I'm illiterate in Mandarin, so you can go and educate me if you feel like every once in a while. You can always suggest a word you're listening to. I will hear it. I could like Google translate it and I can probably say something about it. I started using this phrase. I'm probably gonna get flack for this, but I'm an immersion baby when it comes to Mandarin or things related to Mandarin and Cantonese. Immersion baby. Purely illiterate. Oops. Oh, I forgot. It's RU.
席に戻りましょうか?
席に戻りましょうか? Should we return to the seats too? No. Should we return? Should I return to the seats too? Wait, what? Oh, sorry, not to. Should I return to seats? Can I use? Oh man, you can use both. Actually, but this is more reasonable. Both, yeah, using a method called Mandarin Blueprint to learn, and it's really creative. Quite expensive, but it's been worth it. I see. I think if I had to try Mandarin earlier in my Japanese studies, I would have messed up both languages quite a bit. That's an interesting thought. I'll most definitely tell you how that feels
新しいアルバムの歌が聴きたいです。
At some point soon.
新しいアルバムの歌が聴きたいです。
How did it make you feel when you at the katakana mapo tofu and then heard mapo tofu in Mandarin, in Chinese? That's still lingering in my brain because Duolingo. It's one of the food items that they introduced. I'm like, mapo tofu, mapo tofu. I can't. It's hard for me to do it. Instead of mapo tofu. My partner is Japanese, so we can speak. Oh, that's awesome. That's so cute. Oh, it's one of your favorite meals? That's my go-to meal when I have to host. If I have to host, I would go out, buy some nice ingredients, and make a fancy mapo tofu. In English, I would say mapo tofu instead. Right. Or mapo dao. Mapo dao would be what I would say to my parents, because I speak Fujianese. So hearing the Mandarin at the Japanese is really strange. I thought it was Japanese thing before he told me it was a Chinese dish. Fair enough. Fair enough. Yeah. Speaking of one, here's one that I catch myself saying a lot. Ramen. Ramen. See, I just said it. I just did it again. I have a habit of saying ramen, not ramen. Ramen is ramen, right? Ramen. But mian is Mandarin. Mian is noodles. So from time to time, I would catch myself saying ramen. You know, like chow mian and no mian, that kind of thing. Mian or mian. Mian would be Fujianese. Mian. No mian. Chow mian. Lots of mians. All your nudes. All your nudes. Yeah, the Chinese pronunciation is much more like the Korean. Yeah. What is it? Namyan? Namyan? Yeah, it has like an extra, it has an extra syllable in it. It has like an extra syllable, like a more pronounced syllable. They're both technically two syllables, but it's a little bit more pronounced. Japanese get lazy with stuff. It varies. Yeah. Yeah, Namyan. Yep. Or whatever would be the, yeah. Yep.
新しいアルバムの歌が聴きたいです。
新しいアルバムの新しい wait 新しいアルバムの歌が聴きたいです。Okay, oh yeah, I messed this up.
聴きたいです。
I does. Sure.
あ、席に戻りますか?
What I screwed up here? Oh. Oh. Are we returning to the seats? Are you? Dude. 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 I formally object. I formally object. Okay.
あ、席に戻りますか?
Introducing the Duolingo.
Yes. Yes, indeed. The dualism. Japanese people who abbreviate everything instantly, I noticed. We started going to Trader Joe's and it immediately becomes Torejo. 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 I love it. I default to you for questions and I if not a question. I collectively refer to, I use we's and us when we're asking about doing things. Like, should we? Are we going to do things? So I typically refer to the collective as opposed to myself. I don't individualize myself too much when I'm making decisions. So like in that situation, the thing that they're talking about usually is should we or are we returning to our seats, because it would be a collective. I don't usually do things alone in those situations.
あ、すみません。ペンはありますか？
すみません。
すみません。
Pen wa something.
は
Arimasu?
ありか。
Sure, that works. I want his autograph. Sign. Sign ga hoshii desu.
さが欲しいです。
Fair enough.
ケンさん、どこに並びますか？
I love Torejo. I like that. Torejo is so good. Also, shout out to YouTube for recommending the channel. Came over here from there since you were live. It's got to know me quite well. Oh, nice. Yeah, I love learning Mandarin, like from other people for the time being, or like connecting all my languages together. So definitely feel free to tell me some interesting things between Japanese and Mandarin. I can probably say something about Fujianese in the process. It enriches the process, right? Although I am running really late today, so as much as I can keep on going, I do have to get to the end of this. But yeah, definitely. Also, Ken is your partner's name, and Duolingo just made me double take. Ken. Oh yeah, because Ken is the default name. Ken is one of the first three names. Ken, Naomi, and Hana are the Ken Tanaka, Naomi Nakayama, and Hana Nakayama, and then Naomi Yamaguchi is probably the three standards. So Ken Tanaka, your partner's name doesn't happen to be Tanaka as well. That would be really sus. They pick like English names that are very common too. Although not the most common English names actually. They went with like Danieru, like Smitsu for a surname, and like Erika, and Andorio. Oh, it isn't? Okay, fair enough. So how do you feel about Dianhua, and Dianhua? How I would say was Dianhua, but how do you feel about that? I feel like there's so many things I want to ask you, but I'm probably gonna have the same experiences when I start learning Mandarin. All the same, very similar experiences, but there's so many like fun little tiny overlaps that I already notice as I'm learning Japanese because of my Chinese background.
ケンさん、どこに並びますか？
Ken-san, naru? Wait. Oh.
並びます。並びます。
Wait.
ケンさん、どこに並びますか？
Doko.
ケンさん、どこに並びますか？並びます。
並びますか？ Where do we line up? Narabimasu. And I missed something. Did I miss ni? Alright, now I gotta get more hearts because I've been being too laxed. Alright, I do gotta finish this. For me, it's interesting since it's like, oh, this is Japanese with spice when it comes to the pronunciation. The other way is like, oh, this is watered down Chinese.
Hamster.
Fair enough. That's pretty funny. So your partner is Japanese, and are you something different? Because it makes it sound like it's something different. But Mandarin grammar has been so much easier than Japanese since it's much closer to English. Oh, that's interesting. You're a super white American? Oh, you're like one of those couple. I watch a lot of couples. Oh, you're British? I watch a lot of interracial couples. And it's usually like English is the bridging language. So I absolutely find it incredibly endearing. I find it incredibly endearing because the common language is helpful to me. At the same time, I get a chance to kind of take in the context of the other language in the with English as a facilitator. Oh, that's awesome. Dude, having exclusive rights to a Japanese speaking partner, that's incredibly adorable. You went to Japan for work in 2019 and met him then. Then here we are, 4.5 years married and living. Oh, that's so cute. I have so many questions for your partner. Because your partner is a transplant. So I have so many questions for your partner. I am I'm an ABC. So since you are given away that you're in the United States, I'm an ABC. So I'm an American born Chinese. And both my parents are from Fujian. And I9, it's if you're British, are you currently in the UK? I9, are you getting enough sleep? Or are you like reverse schedule, like really late over there? I mean, it's late over here too now, but that's honestly. Sadly, you don't like it there? And you called me out on it? Oh, no. You mentioned you were British, you know? The thing about is you shared that you're high functioning. I9. Often when on sleep. Often when I think about high functioning people, it's actually a tall order and a monumental task to trying to find proper sleep schedules. So yeah, I'm kind of curious. Why do you say UK sadly? Is UK not stimulating enough for you? Or do you desire to be somewhere else? As long as it's not too personal of a question, right? Sue, wait, where we are? Sue, wait. Supe. Oh, Spain go. Oh my gosh, it can Spain go. Oh, I need to get hearts back. Okay. Spain go no sensei. Okay. Spanish teacher, Spanish language teacher. Spain go no sensei wa totemo yasashii desu. Okay. It's very, very nice. Sure. Okay, sure. Napkin.
Menu.
Menu.
Napkin.
No one saw that.
ビールを3つと餃子を7つください。
Okay.
ビールを3つと餃子を7つください。
What we got? Three beers, seven dumplings. Short fried dumplings. Yeah, you rather move to, okay. You rather move to Japan? I see. Is that something you can do?
猫
Is something you can work
ス
towards?
ペイン語の授業はどうですか？
スペイン語の授業はどうですか? How is the Spain class? この something napkin はあれです。Short color.
本屋はどこですか？
I heard
本屋はどこですか？
not for a long time. You're trying to think of your next trip outside of a return? Outside of a return to Japan? Maybe Taiwan or something like that? Ooh. Are you gonna learn Taiwanese too? You can kind of get away with cross association, but that's kind of a really tough ask. If you could, you might go for the proposed nomad visa in the future. Oh yeah, I heard about the nomad feature. Do you have a way so you have remote work available to you? I9. Japan is great, though can be quite isolating and sad if you can't speak the language. As a tourist, it's fine, but living there definitely adds a bit more of you, at least in your opinion. It's a very reasonable opinion. Are frequency lists even helpful to learn things? Are frequency lists even helpful to... Oh, interesting. I haven't tackled frequency lists, Gabriel. I have thought about it on frequently, using frequency lists. In fact, I even think G-Show prioritizes based on frequency whenever you look up stuff, right? That's an interesting question. For myself, in terms of language learning, frequency lists will help me resonate with a statistical average. However, if you're someone that is incredibly identified by personality or like free-flowing learning, it can become incredibly restrictive and prescription based, so it can suck the life out of your personality when you're approaching it from a frequency list thing. It's kind of like a hyper min-maxing efficiency tool. So in my opinion, possibly if your goal is to resonate with a statistical average, perhaps. I think ultimately, though, it might end up being superfluous for the sake of a long journey, a person who's seeking to use the target language as a life skill. Meant to delete that, but yeah, would have to augment Mandarin a bit, I think. Yeah, frequency lists is a generic way, in my opinion, are not useful. Frequency lists related to your interests and what you actually do with that language will be more useful. Yes, you are more statistically likely to establish an emotional tether and sentimentalism, which is an incredible practical field for acquisition, really, and learning. So using a frequency list, if you're someone who has predicated on using a distilled method like that, oftentimes is someone that's not necessarily reliant on things like interest and sentimentalism and emotional things to leverage learning. So I could kind of see it in a very specific case. However, I would say neurotypically, I would probably stray away from frequency. Right? It's kind of like the hyper-objectivity of language learning in general. What is the fastest way to learn language? The way you can most consistently find learning language engaging. As opposed to, what is the fastest way and best way to learn language? Cite 100 people who convergently rely on specific tools and use those tools, as opposed to evaluating those tools based on your own preferences. Right? However, if you're someone who's inexperienced, like say a child, like someone who has not engaged in the act of self-identity or identifying social needs, problem solving, critical skills like self-awareness and whatnot, you haven't established that, perhaps frequency list and some sort of prescribed structure is a great starting place to establish that. Also, acquiring a language just takes the time and investment into a consistency. Yep, fair enough. Yep. The underlying case, although that would be probably making it a little oversimplified. Oversimplified in terms of, but what leads to consistency is the GOAT, in my opinion. And taking a psychological and holistic approach to it, be it if you're an adult, to establish an accurate self-awareness profile in order to establish that consistency, versus if you're younger, maybe these things are helpful as a starting point. But honestly, I think most of us here are probably aged and fairly well self-aware of things and sentimentalisms, things that are important to you, things that motivate you. So oftentimes gravitating towards things that promote consistency is my mantra. I tend to reinforce that. Unfortunately, what that looks like is much like the answer to frequency lists, variable based on the person's self-awareness. So that's my take on frequency, I suppose. And I largely agree with what Shady is saying, right? Without trying to oversimplify it too much. Oh, and at the beginning, pick a resource and stick to it, or else you'll chase resource forever and never learn, in your opinion. That's a fair point that only you have brought up, that I have not had an opportunity to talk about in these last 82 days. Interesting. Any source gets you started, gets you progressing more, and you try to find a perfect or faster method. That is excellent. Yes. That is a point that I cannot digress on today because I have already spent 5 hours of my time doing something else. But thank you, Shady. And I will save that discussion for tomorrow. I will save that discussion for tomorrow. That is fantastic. The endless min-maxing. The endless min-maxing without being able to start. Right? And hampering and ultimately ending up in a situation that's probably self-defeatist or nihilistic in general. But yes, that's an excellent point. Wow. It's so well said. Any resource that lets you get started, you're progressing more than trying to find the perfect or fastest method. Indeed. Indeed. Very well said. That deserves a star, but I'm not like some... I don't know. I'll give you a virtual high five. Shady. That's really well said. Actually, may I ask... what do you do for a professional background? Shady. That was very articulate. Well articulated. I have a smile on my face, and that's good. Oh, okay. Well, that's what I'm here for, right? I want to put a smile on people's faces. Even when you're doing something. You're a programmer? Excellent. I like your sound logic. I really appreciate your sound logic. Very well said. By the way, the things I'm reading, I'm also interacting with someone on YouTube at the same time. So we've been talking about bouncing back between like philosophy, rhetoric, and then the cross between pragmatism and psychology, right? So that kind of thing comes up a lot. And I use that time to do this. So it might sideline the whole acquisition of Japanese, but really it's the intersect of learning something is the purpose of me sharing my experience. Otherwise, you know, I wouldn't stream it at all, right? I know that sounds a little like counterintuitive, but due to the hustle culture nature of the current present generation, they typically think you're here to spectate, but not interact, right? I know the vast majority of Twitch spectators, a bigger majority, would prefer to watch someone perform something that they can reference and whatnot. And this is my performance, at least in my opinion. My performance is to engage in discussions and be encouraging and offering counterexamples and some slight deep discussions here and there when time permits, while trying to educate myself in another language, I suppose. In terms of relating to your programming thing, historically, I'm trained in Python. But largely due to use for bioinformatics back in my day when I was still working, or when I was still working as a scientist. So my only experience is probably Python. However, since then, I've encountered some people where we kind of, if a person has problems, like some personal friends, I occasionally splash in like JavaScript and C+ with them to like see what the problem is, but usually it's Python background. A lot of the stuff I'm interested in learning fascinates me, and so any intellectual discussion on the topic or even distinctly related topic is right up your alley. The way you're speaking, right? Simply your word choices, and also, by the way, it's a very telltale sign when you still use punctuations, capitalizations, and you do kind of end certain clauses on prepositional phrases. I like the casualness or prepositions, but the way you type is very indicative of someone who is of a certain mindset. Python is a great language. You use JavaScript and TypeScript primarily to your day-to-day. I see. Recently I've become acquainted, a good friend of a younger person who is also seeking a degree in computer science, and they were talking about they were choosing between like C++, or like going in from C to C++ or JavaScript. So they're currently enrolled in a class for JavaScript at the moment, and I introduced them to Python as a way of a primer, just as an exercise, because I believe Python is very useful in the sense that, much like Duolingo, it'd be an interesting primer that I could use, that I have some experience in. And then we both like kind of tackled JavaScript together as a form of encouragement. Now he's far more competent, obviously. Your spacebar is the enter key. What is your enter button? What does your enter key do? I9. I don't. Oh, you don't mean physically. Oh, okay. I see. You don't happen to mentor or instruct anyone, JD, do you? Like, are you in a position of mentorship? Or, because the way you talk about learning and your interest in learning, are you in a position in which you offer advice or consultation for those who, are you in a position to offer advice a lot of times? I'm always curious. I like meeting professionals who have a position in which they're constantly engaged in being able to disseminate information and educate others, let alone learn also as well. I feel like one of the gold standards of learning is being able to eventually instruct or teach afterwards, right? Much like engaging in intellectual discussions. Oh no. Sorry, I sound like I'm gonna have to apologize in advance. I use 2 different types of voices, and this one, when I meet someone who is also as intellectually like a lot of things, I tend to switch voices to match the occasion. You are currently a lead at your project. Oh, I see. So you help teach classes. Okay, you help teach classes when you're in college. I found that teaching my friends what I was learning was the best way to ensure that I really understood what I had learned. Exceptionally well said. That is... So I wasn't trying to be too presumptuous, but largely that's where I'm aiming at. If you can teach, it's a gold standard in my opinion for self-checking, self-evaluation, and the comprehension level of your own, you know, your own education, your own knowledge. Excellent. You really sound like, I don't know if this is a compliment or not, but you really do sound like a person who's in a teaching position, like an educating position. I didn't want to presume, so I prefer to ask most of the time. Yeah, that is definitely a perspective that I can relate to. It's awesome that I had this opportunity. I love teaching forward people. And everyone else. It's just I resonate a lot with people who are teaching forward. However, other people are very extraordinary. It's just I don't have the same feelings. But I can tell you now, though, worrying about teaching something does have its trade-offs. Well, that's a discussion for another time, I suppose. You make compromises. So what am I doing? Kono, I clicked on Geimu. Kono Geimu wa totemo musukashii desu. Yeah, that works.
ラーメンを2つと餃子を7つください。
Okay.
メニュー、ラーメン
Ramen, how much did you want?
を2つ
That too, that works. Gyoza, Gyoza 7つ? Yeah, sure. Wait, did I hear gyoza? Yeah.
餃子
Gyoza
7つ7つを
no 7つ
ください。ラーメンを2つと餃子を7つください。
Sure. With that note, it's probably late for you now, Shady, right? It's definitely late for I-9, and I hope you're sleeping well. If I can find enough time, I want to do free courses and such online to teach people programming and system design. I would like to lower the barriers for others achieving their goals. That requires a lot more time to put together than it seems at first glance, though. I can assure you, you are preaching to the choir here, Shady. Yeah, it's 6:30 a.m. That's what I figured, taking into account the... Oh, you're in Nevada. Okay. Okay. Fair enough. Pacific Standard Time. Yeah, I can assure you, you have my... You took the words right out of my mouth. So I thought about that. Unfortunately, like you, probably, I don't have a day job. So that's a disclaimer. I don't have a day job presently. However, the only way I can really demonstrate how the learning process is, I'm doing this thing here deliberately as a platform in order to demonstrate that sometimes when you can find a method and you can tweak the method as long as you have enough ingenuity and creativity, you may be able to problem solve and discover things about your own learning process while using a tool, instead of having the tool define and, you know, capstone what you're able to do in the learning process. So in order to do that, I figure why not make it a fun social experiment to use myself as an example of how I would approach using Duolingo to remain engaged in language learning. So it was a fun social experiment to work up against the echo chamber of naysaying and like emotionally driven sentiments, I suppose. Not necessarily particularly objective in the sense of how people approach offering advice in language learning. So this is me 82 days in. Perhaps one day I'll do something else, but for now it's a kind of a fun social experiment that I'm doing with myself. In fact, I haven't learned this way in any capacity beforehand, so in itself it's a novelty to me. I don't actually typically use this type of approach even when I was younger. I would say maybe the earliest days of my life, from the ages of 5 to 9, perhaps this is the type of strategy that I'm used to, but that is long since been in the past. So I use this as a way to maybe suggest or evaluate what there isn't in Duolingo in order to use other strategies to complement Duolingo, so that even if you choose a subpar method, you can optimize, you can use it in a productive way that can educate yourself in what to look for in the future or what to stick with, whatnot, things like that. Now, this is excellent. One random thought I had was something like YouTube or Twitch, but strictly for studying and learning. Indeed, I tend to watch a lot of content of other people learning scratches, scratches and itch I have in your brain. I see. I thought it'd be cool to turn some random channel on and just watch someone learn something new. That's personally what I do a lot. I do gravitate towards these streams as well, primarily on Twitch. Interesting. So originally, Shady and I9, we're gonna postpone completing this lesson because I really love this discussion. Originally, I tried to use video games as a platform because video games have one of the highest influences on the selective bias of the younger generation, right? So in order to, if I am able to integrate some of the learning capacities, like transcribe a lot of the things that make gamification and or video games to help for the learning process, if I can transcribe that and change the perspective and utilize that to acquire other skills like life skills that I feel are a bit underdeveloped in youth, like younger adults, perhaps that would be a great way to instill learning and studying habits where the younger adult can see that learning other skills can leverage their passion for video game and hobbies. That didn't go so well. So overall, the social experiment was kind of like, yeah, it's very hard to connect even with the level required. So like I used to play video games basically, and then I spent a lot of extra time showing how a video game can run parallels to maybe not so trivial things like creating a fitness program for yourself or troubleshooting communication skills between your friends and things like that. And it didn't really quite work. But recently though, doing this, it's a step closer to a stronger gated pre-selection for people who are already in the mindset of studying and learning, right? So the gates have been quite lowered and it attracts less of a closed off audience. I tried a lot with video games actually, and naturally Duolingo caught my attention because it is a platform that attempted to show up on Twitch, right? Use it as a platform to bridge the gap between the gamification, the popular influence of gamification, and something like language learning. So here I am, 82 days into this journey. Meanwhile, I still juggle a little bit of gaming, but usually the gaming is used to spark interest, not so much a mechanical thing, right? Perhaps one day. Yeah, I tried. I usually talk about people's mental health. Like, I'm a mental health person. I run towards people who have non-sustainable lifestyles at a time. Not so much a teacher anymore. It was nice to be able to see flourishing college students and helping college students that are just starting their journey. However, nowadays, a bigger audience like YouTube and Twitch, when you're able to have spare time to do certain things like offer increase the accessibility of what like Shady is referring to, that's awesome. And I always appreciate when I encounter other individuals who have some sort of aspiration for that, and or individuals who participate in doing that already, which is to lower the barrier. I like your use of the word barrier. Yes. Improve the accessibility. Honestly, engaging in a learning experience can affect a lot of other things that you would learn about, right? Especially about yourself. So you'd be surprised how much trying to encourage oneself to continue learning and set yourself up for a mindset that makes you almost bulletproof to all the potential unforeseen circumstances and skills that are required in someone's life. The difficulty there makes sense. People who come in to watch someone on Duolingo are already of a specific mindset, as you alluded to, whereas with games it's really hard to attract a specific audience. Yeah, that being said, some genre games will lend themselves better to filtering out certain predispositions. Absolutely. So usually most of my games deal with heavily cultured driven creative process, not mechanically forward focused, where you talk about like skills, competitive things, right? Especially mechanically focused things. So a lot of times I use things like creative games, visual novel games, storytelling games, things that deal with cultural dissonance, cultural diversity, and also deck builders. I'm a fan of puzzle games and deck builders and circuit logic. So there are plenty of platforms of indie games that are incredibly, how you say, niche, self-sustaining niche-like, especially puzzle games with an aspect of narration that deals with particular topics that can be illustrated or presented as a video game concept, like management and stuff. You're all about mechanics. That's understandable. I9. You're high-functioning people tend to require a lot of stimulation, and a lot of stimulation can be offered in high complex mechanical situations. Less like pretty much lots of high mechanical stuff. Alternatively, you can also do like one of your favorite games of all time is The Witness. I'm familiar with Witness. Have you played Talos Principle? JD, if you're a fan of The Witness, Talos Principle, exceptional. A more lower casual aspect of Witness, probably Portal. I imagine Portal 1 and 2 is on the list. But Talos Principle 2 recently came out. Witness is also, there's abduction, right? From a game design standpoint, I think it's absolutely brilliant, and a lot of its approaches can be applied to things outside of just video games. Absolutely. I actually think lots of puzzle games can do that too. Have you played a game called A Monster's Expedition? It's a Sokoban game, so a box pushing game. There's a indie group called Dreadneck and Friends, and they make the classic type of thing. Speaking of Japanese, right? Sokoban. Yeah, Sokoban, just box pushing. A Monster Expedition is the one that I spent many days on, and it's brilliant. It's such a cute little game. Maybe it's like $2 on a Steam sale. So that might be something like Cocoon. Cocoon recently. I have not played Cocoon yet. Cocoon is dealing with what is that term? When you recursion. It's a recursion game. Puzzle, a game that investigates recursion. Oh, and there's also the programming games, Zachtronics games. I don't know if you've ever played Zachtronics games. It's legitimately coding, but approachable from a intuitive standpoint. Anything made by Zachary something. I got his last name. But he's legitimately a programmer who makes it. Some of his games would include like TIS 100, Opus Magnum, or Magnus Opus, and then Roboto Factory, or not Factorial, but Senshin, Shenzhen IO. The trailer for Cocoon broke my mind when I first saw it. It's on my list. Oh, okay. Oh, and then you have played Shenzhen. Yeah, Shenzhen IO. Okay. We're already of the same like mind. No, enough said. Right? Enough said. We I can tell that there are too many coincidences, obviously. So you are I can very much resonate with the many things that go on that interest you. Like already list so many of them, right? I like video games. It's kind of hard to get people to learn from video games, unfortunately. Perhaps you could be the one, Shady. I tried for a while. I tried for 4 years. Like 5-ish years at this point. Nothing really shout out that I could hang on to. So it's not without trying. But I would be totally interested in seeing what you come up for programming. I already dabble in a lot of people's any instructional content stuff. By the way, here's a really shot out the left field. Do you happen to listen to the Greens brothers? Like Hank Green and John Green? There's a YouTube channel for learning Japanese through games called Game Genko. Interesting. And I think he does a great job. It's not quite the same thing we were talking about, but he uses games as a brilliant vehicle to teach people the language. Oh yeah, I see. I've been perusing for people who I'm looking for someone who actively narrates. You're a huge fan of the Green brothers? Okay. Shady, listen. We have too many converging interests, so naturally probably a lot of things I'm gonna say is probably you can probably guess some of the things that I do as well, because these are very converging topics. So like what I mean is the association between like these things, if you're on YouTube and you're on a platform, likely these are converging. Also, these things are converging. Yeah, I am a huge fan of the Green Brothers, especially when they talk about certain things. It's okay to disagree with my Fictitious, please. Fictitious. I'm meeting like a second, like someone from Nevada that is legitimately converging on so many behavioralisms. This is like deducing myself at this point. But Green's Brothers, that's a big one. Man. Game Genko, that is super interesting. I'm gonna have to check it out. I've been looking for someone, so in my next stage of Japanese, I was gonna look for how to approach narration, as in using a multilingual approach to using video game narration. So I like lots of story games, like Freebird games, where they talk about like existential crises, closure, and grief. But at the same time, they are text-based games with no vocalization. But I typically do a lot of narration. So most of these games tend to be localized in multiple languages. So I was going to use my that as an opportunity, as a leaping point to practice other dynamics like vocal manipulation, voice acting, right? Which can lead to vocal production in other languages, while also being able to read and engage in a Japanese language, while also re-engaging the medium of video games. So in the future, I plan, hopefully in another 90 days, I'm going to be play a game called Rakuyen again, and then there's subsequent related game called Mr. Sato, made by Shikihara. Shikihara is like a music composer turned solo developer who is I think she's like possibly Japanese American, and she made these brilliant games that are story narrative driven. You have that like interaction, but most mechanics are represented in the story. How to present the story is the mechanics, things like Undertale and whatnot, mechanical storytelling, right? And it offers a lot of opportunities to integrate the whole Japanese learning and video games. Visual novel games are kinda off the list because sometimes you can get in trouble with visual novel games. Like what I mean is like copyright kind of things, but there are particular games that are very free and fair use for language learning. So I've been looking around for someone who reads Japanese games and reads it along with you, kind of like grade readers, but not really. So this game Genko thing kind of sounds really interesting too, where the person is using it to teach language. Avoid everything from the Steins Gate characters. Yeah, I noticed. I'm a big fan of Steins Gate, so I am very well aware, even though I'm not competent in Japanese, right? By the way, my professional background is in science, so as much as I like science fiction and things that deal with heavy topics like that type of thing, sometimes you gotta know what not to do, which I don't think my Japanese competency will ever reach the level. I don't plan on it, by the way. I don't plan on aiming for something like that. But generally speaking, storytelling games tend to elicit emotional responses and very emotional stories, and not so much like, I know Steins Gate goes for that sometimes, but man, Steins Gate can be very wordy. Even when reading the English subtext, it's kind of wordy. I do love Steins Gate though. So we already like Steins Gate. Now I'm surprised. Have you watched Frien, by the way, Shady? Have you watched Frien recently? Talking about deep cuts into mentorship and understanding the value of the journey versus goal-oriented learning. One thing I like to do when learning another language, especially when it comes to getting used to the flow of language, is watching Let's Play in the language I'm studying. Indeed, it helped me out a lot with having natural Japanese reactions to certain stimulus. Oh, natural Japanese. I see. At the moment, I have not yet watched that one yet, but my friends have all told me I need to watch it. It is, I understand we just met, Shady, but if I had any anime that would illustrate and encapsulate why I like to stream and why I like to do things that people have maybe a potentially bad relationship with and stuff, Frien captures that spirit. It's an ultimate, it's one of the things that are underrepresented in the climate, the society, like the internet culture we have today. So I can't wait to hear your thoughts on that. In terms of the Japanese stimuli thing, right now, my interaction, my immersion outside of Duolingo, like, you know, my other forms of input, I like watching vlogs in Japanese. How do you type out that anime? Oh, Frien? Let me... There you go. It's such a beautiful anime. But for the Let's Play thing, right now, I'm watching 2 or 3 people who vlog in Japanese. And they're deliberately vlogging in a format that is for people who are below N4. So this person like goes around and tells you like, oh hey, today I'm gonna go around Osaka and ask what they do on the weekends. So things like that. Or like, hey, we're gonna go to this hotel and show you what the hotel is like, but using the Japanese that's maybe like understanding to me, right? In like N5 and N4. So much of the Duolingo vocabulary comes into play. So is comprehensible Japanese one of the channels? I'm only recently done this, so these are smaller channels. But comprehensible Japanese, I'll take that. I will write that. Is that a thing I should be? Is that should be something that I should consider? Comprehensible Japanese. Oh, interesting. Oh, it's about this size too. It's a guy named Shun. He's a vlogger mostly, but I've been looking at Japanese vlogs towards casual people. It's a YouTube channel dedicated to. Oh, okay. I will keep this here. Oh, interesting. Oh, it's so quaint. It's so quaint. I'll keep this tab open. I'll look at it. I'll look at it after this. Someone else suggested Yu. I don't know if you're familiar with Yu. Apparently, quite a popular Spotify podcaster that speaks in Japanese. Their YouTube video is a little bit their YouTube channel is a little bit overwhelming for me at the moment. So maybe slightly beyond my comprehension. But I can see their attraction. It's a podcast leaned towards Japanese listening, right? And then I use Gray Readers. Gray Readers is the other thing. If I don't want to watch something, perhaps, or listen to something at the point. But yeah, vlogs are great for learning as well. Still trying to figure out the right way to search for Mandarin vlogs, but someday. That can be really tough, right? Because we also have to keep in mind there's like a cultural pre-selection for It's not the same for Japanese, I don't think, but speaking from experience, it's actually quite difficult to find those who vlog in Mandarin per se. There's another good podcast called Nihongo Kon Tepe. Tepe. That is good for it. Okay. Hold up. Let me write this down. Interesting. Oh, interesting. Oh, interesting. Okay. Thanks. Excellent. All right, not to overwhelm myself, I really appreciate the candor. I would be interested to know what you end up finding out about Mandarin vlogs. By the way, I'm Fujianese, and let's just say the internet has non-existent outside of like really deep Chinese hosted sites for exposure to a dialect of Mandarin. And even more so, I think Mandarin requires maybe you accessing things like Bilibili and stuff, as opposed to like using the accessible forums, like accessible platforms like YouTube and whatnot. You're probably more successful going to like Bilibili, but that also requires you to be able to read Mandarin, because those sites, well, you can still get away with English, like using the, I don't know if Google has transcribed all those things, like translate all those things. Anyways, that's how I felt when I'm looking for Chinese things, which is largely a side thing that I do a lot of times, is I'm not learning Japanese in a void. I don't tend to learn language in a void. I would love to know what type of Mandarin vlogs you end up, or Mandarin content you end up discovering. Which, by the way, why Mandarin? Like you did mention that your kanji, like your Japanese exploration, led you to interest, but is there anything else particularly about Mandarin? I don't imagine your partner is interested in Mandarin. There's a level that I reached where I could navigate websites and know how to search what I wanted in Japanese, and then unlocked a lot. I see. Fair enough. Yeah. That's understandable. You should get your partner to learn Mandarin with you. Sorry. I love the idea of a significant couples, right? Learning things together. It's an incredibly endearing and romantic image. You don't have a lot of that sometimes.
誰
は
その
俳優
ですか?
Oh, whoops. It's the other way around.
難しいゲーム?
Wait, wouldn't Japanese be considered a dialect of Mandarin? Well, I don't remember. Isn't there a linguist out there that quantifies what percentage requires to be a distinct language of its own? I imagine Japanese have components, enough percentage of components that aren't inherited. Someone said some percentages the other day, just to throw a ballpark. I was told that like 50% Chinese, and then there's like an impact of 10% of English, American English, right? At the same time, like 40% is a lot. Yeah, besides the borrowed stuff. right? Besides the borrowed stuff. Even when considering that, it's very difficult to, yeah. You can write Japanese in only Chinese characters? That is something. Yeah, outside of the writing system. Not really. I know it's technically the most spoken language in the world, and I feel like there's a lot of misconceptions between the American culture and China outside of Taiwan. Yeah, I ran in. Okay. Not really. I know it's the most spoken, what, Mandarin? Mandarin is not the most spoken language anymore. But interestingly enough, it is outside of the American culture. I feel like there's a lot of misconception between the American culture and China outside of Taiwan. Absolutely. And I think that's largely due to geopolitics, censorship, and cultural dissonance. But, you know, it's not entirely, it's one of those, like, you can't confirm nor deny what the accuracy and fidelity of information when it goes through two geopolitically dissonant governments, right? So that's always a tough thing. It's a very real thing, since my family is that, right? Japanese is entirely unrelated to Mandarin outside the borrowed words, and yeah, and taking the writing, sure, right? But Japanese is its own language family, the Altaic language family. Are there other Altaic language families, like members outside of Japanese? Or is this the case of like red pandas? Is this a red panda situation? Okay, it's a red panda situation. All right, fair enough. I don't know if you know, you might like red pandas. This is a bit of a stretch. If you like John Green and all the other stuff, it would be a pretty big leap if you like red pandas. But I like red pandas, so this is getting a little out of the question. But red panda is a thing where, like, oh yeah, it's not a panda. It's not quite a like the other family that it looks like. It's its own family. So it's a red panda situation. Like classically, like we were doing like phenotypical, like genus species classification. So Japanese is grammatically similar to Korean and Turkish. Oh, interesting. But if you tell Japanese or Korean that their language are grammatically similar and infer that they may have common ancestors, they get upset. Yes, geopolitics, history, and lots of war. So, yes. Strange as it may be, the red panda is your favorite animal. Oh my goodness. Oh my. Well, talking about social behaviors, I really was not I was going for a Hail Mary pass. Yeah, I was going for a Hail Mary pass of saying that perhaps behavioralism is not so self-selected that even that would be a thing. I honestly was going for something that couldn't possibly be aligned between all the stuff we already mentioned. But all right, well, apparently clearly we know each other way more than I could have possibly imagined. But yes, these are sentimental gifts, and I really like the red panda, and honestly, symbolically what it stands for. In college, you had a red panda as my desktop wallpaper for 2 years. Dang. Wow. Yeah, these two stuffed red pandas are a gift. So I long story, I'll keep the story a little bit short. I have a best friend who used to be my sister's best friend, or who is my sister's best friend, who now are both of our best friends. They thought she thought it was a great idea to donate to the local zoo. I don't remember which zoo it is. And when you donate to the zoo in someone's name, you can get red panda for it. Well, it was for Christmas. I'm pretty sure it was for either my birthday or Christmas. Now my memory is slipping. I think it's for Christmas. So the one guy kind of got lost in a warehouse, or like a inventory something. So I asked this friend, like, oh yeah, I didn't get it. So she went and called up customer like support and stuff, and then did it again, and ultimately the other one found its way into me somehow, like found its way to me somehow. So now I have two, and these are the two red pandas I keep as a sentimental gift. Actually, most of these things are sentimental gifts. I typically try to live a minimalistic lifestyle. I have this very poor, long story short, I have this very poor ability to manage materials, so I try to stay as minimalistic as I can, but I do keep knickknacks and like sentimentalism that brightens my life a little bit, and all of these are products of that. I don't know, tell me you collect things and stuff, right? The first one was simply for a partner to be. Yes, it was meant to be. Waiting for a partner, indeed. So help me. If do you hoard things? I know this is gonna be a really big leap and it's so weird direct, but do you collect things? Are you a hoarder? Like, do you have a tendency to, if you needed to start collecting something, would you be compulsory to collect things? You've collected some stuff, but mostly only kept sentimental things now. Yes, fair enough. Exactly. Your partner collects a lot of stuff though. Yeah. You see, I can imagine. I love other people who collect things, but for myself, I collect the sentimental things. However, if I started to collect things, it can get out of control. Yeah, okay. When you were young, you held on to way too many things. I stopped collecting things and stuff because I couldn't part with it. I actually have somewhere upstairs, I have like 30 pounds or like 30 to 50 pounds of textbooks that I couldn't part ways with. Like, I went to college, you know, you're supposed to a lot of people resell their textbooks and whatnot. I kept them. So after some point, I noticed that it's probably not the most healthy thing for myself. So it feels compulsory. So nowadays, I only keep sentimental gifts and try to cut down on the whole collecting thing. I do love how other people manages it though. So I was kind of curious. Oh man. I still can't believe you like red pandas. That's shocking. That's very shocking. There's no evidence that you would see a thumbnail or anything regarding red pandas. Sounds like your garage, a ton of books in there, and that I never look at. Indeed. I actually had this one course where they asked to buy the book. So I got the book, but then I ended up never using it. And I still kept the book. Like, I think the professor was excellent. Like, so excellent that they were meticulous on making sure you need to know. Like, I was engaged enough that I ended up not really using the book. But I didn't depart with the book either. It was like a keepsake for the marking that I don't know, taken that course or something. Which, by the way, what is your most recent movie you watched? I'm curious.
難しいゲーム？難しいゲーム？
Or book. You have a few books from college, but many of them I consider the graveyard of Japanese textbooks that I'll never use again. Chasing perfection rather than studying for way too long. Ooh, that's a deep cut. Chasing perfection rather than studying for way too long. Wow. That hits very different.
本屋に行きましょうか。
その俳優は誰ですか？その俳優は
Have I watched any films by Akira Kurosawa? Yes. 2. Nowadays, I consume more referential things to Akira Kurosawa. Don and oh, actually 3. Rashomon and Yojimbo. Oh, and 7 Samurai. Of course, 7 Samurai. Yo, the Hidden Fortress kind of looks interesting now that I'm looking at it. I was making sure that I didn't get Kurosawa mixed up with someone else. Your most recent movie? I haven't had much time. Oh, okay, with work. That's perfectly understandable. But you did watch a show, The 3 Body Problem? That sounds right. Oh, and you started on Shogun? I haven't started on Shogun yet. Yeah. That's fair enough. Shogun. I know you mentioned anime in some way, in some like indirect way. Have you watched Blue-Eyed Samurai? Of recent years, like last year, Blue-Eyed Samurai. Now that is a multi East meets West production right there. That I hope that Shogun also captures that. Yeah, Blue-Eyed Samurai was exceptional, and it's a wonderful. It's a really cute. I don't know if you looked into the writers of that. It's a wonderful blend. Like you can definitely see the collaborative nature between the wife and husband team behind Blue-Eyed Samurai. So excellent. You know. Yeah. Ooh, the reason why I brought up Blue-Eyed Samurai is because someone, Waylon, asked me if I watched an Akira Kurosawa film. Blue-Eyed Samurai it's one of those many times that it's a referential thing to Kurosawa. So, man, it was nice, especially that one episode that deliberately references Akira Kurosawa. Man, sorry.
その俳優は誰ですか？
had to make mention that.
その俳優は誰ですか？
誰ですか？
誰ですか？
Fair enough.
Kono.
I don't think I'm ever gonna finish this. Sorry.
Chairo.
この茶色の
の動物
はハムスターですか？
ハムスタ
ハ
ーです
ムスター
か
ですか？ Okay. Sure. Okay.
ここは
Wait.
ここは
Just kidding. Wait. Actually,
ここは
人気
猫
猫のカフェです？
カフェです
Rip. Oh. Oh, let me guess. Ninki no neko. Oh, yeah. Fair enough. I kind of wanted 2 no's there, but it was only 1 no. Duolingo. That's fine. Common phrases. Neko kahe, I suppose.
そ その
Wait.
そのは誰ですか俳優ここ人気の猫カフェです。
Alright, I'm gonna make one attempt at... Oh, wait. I have 2 hearts. Okay. Alright, we'll focus. And get the sun.
南口の前に並びましょう。
Also, by the way, thanks, guys. Thanks for chatting for so long and having conversations. I get derailed all the time. I can't even be as like this is fantastic.
南口の前に並びましょう。南口の前に
並びましょう。
南口の前に並びましょう。
Sure. 並びましょう。Okay. Okay. 東口。
東口。
Oh, that's it? Oh, 東口。Sure.
東口の前に並びませんか？
Great. Silently watching you calm the angry. Have you used Duolingo before, Shady? I'm actually kind of curious. Like, from intellectual curiosity perspective. Like post 2024. Post 2024 Duolingo.
東口の前に並びませんか？東口の前に並びませんか？
You've been using it as a fun supplement for your Mandarin? Ooh. No spoilers. But how do you find it as a supplement? Like what are your like teasery provocative thoughts about Mandarin? Oh, you also did the entire Japanese course after a friend challenged you. Is this 2024? Is it after the 2023 change? Because I am actually really curious if there's anyone who completed the pre-2023 and then the post-2023 just out of pure intellectual curiosity. Since I started 82 days ago, it's post-2024. So I don't actually even know what the pre-2023 thing is. I met a lot of people that have that that had that experience to some degree. And they all have largely kind of grown out of the Duolingo. Oh, interesting. You got any hot takes? Maybe some hot potatoes? I'm okay with hot potatoes. I know that we already resonate with stuff. It might be uncomfortable for you to give hot takes. I feel like if I am to resonate with some of the stuff we talk about, it might be a little uncomfortable to give hot takes. But you have any unhinged hot takes? Maybe not too unhinged.
東口の前に並びませんか？
並びませんか？並びませんか？並びませんか？ And then東口東口東口東口の前に並びませんか？並びませんか？ I keep adding an extra syllable. I think the story features of Duolingo is underrated. I think it does a I think it does a bad job of explaining grammar effectively, but I also don't think that it is at all. I'm gonna be real with you. I honestly think you just took the words out of my mouth. For Mandarin, it's been nice and very easy since it's basically combining kanji from Japanese with English grammar and word order. Ah, yeah. I can definitely envision that. I'm gonna be honest with you. I don't actually have to even... Okay. Shady. In my life, I've met an instance where I've met I have 3 really, really great friends. They're like brothers from another mother, so to speak. When we met in college, it's almost as though we don't have to explicitly ever communicate our sentiments and our thoughts, right? And oftentimes, it's pretty shocking, oftentimes. And it doesn't get old, where when you present a question to one of these 3 individuals, you would likely also find a very non-separate, like, our opinions overlap quite a lot, like our ways of expressing and talking and analyzing. And I feel like this is probably the second time it's ever happened. The way you described Duolingo just now, outside of the word bad, I know that's something that it's a little bit, I refrain from saying it, but at the same time I would say something like deficient. Duolingo is deficient at explaining grammar, but it's not the intended goal, right? So not only did you deflate and contextualize what constitutes as bad, but at the same time account for its intent. That was so close to some of the many things that I'm talking about. And the story thing, I didn't even get to the story features, but from whatever I've seen in the story features, I can't wait. It takes so long to get to the story features. Like, I won't even get to the story features for another... The pace that I go is 3 days a unit, so it's gonna be a while. It's like section 3 units 24 or something like that. But back to what I was saying, I don't know, I've shared this before, but the brothers from another mother, I met them in college. They happen to be identical triplets. Identical triplets. And the 3 of them, we've gotten to the point where it's one of those things when you ask someone a question and they literally take the words out of your mouth. It's almost as though I don't even need to ask you questions anymore. It's been a while. I don't know how else I can discuss this, but rarely do I ever find this level of resonance between a stranger that I've met just briefly and how uncannily coincidental so many things are. I do believe... Yeah, literally brothers from another mother. Yeah, they're identical triplets. They're still my best friends to this day. And if you ever propose like a intellectual question to any of them and myself, we'll probably give you responses that are relatively close, provided we also have shared experiences. As in, if we all don't have shared experiences and you ask us a question, we are likely to respond in a very similar manner. And that's one of those things that I'm having right now. I'm asking you questions, but the coincidence seems so uncanny. What you just said summarizes like possibly a talking point that I revisit every 30 days or so, where to distinguish between what is intended and what it can't do, what it can or cannot do, objectively speaking. However, and then contextualizing if the intent of the design was made for that. right? As a programmer or someone who has a background in methodology and like, you know, lots of like experiment setups and whatnot, and hypotheses driven stuff, null hypothesis testing, you have to always tend to consider what is within the scope of the tool or whatever project you're doing, right? And oftentimes if you investigate that type of thing, you're often left not confused at what it can and cannot do, right, in terms of the product. And oftentimes I hear criticisms of Duolingo for things that it really isn't designed to do in the first place. Oftentimes people sit there wondering like, yo, dude, Duolingo doesn't do this. It's like, you're right. I agree. It doesn't do this. And say, well, why doesn't Duolingo do this? Well, the design intent might be sometimes at odds with what you're requesting. It's kind of like one of the criticisms I come at me all the time is Duolingo is too slow. Like as a general consensus, like that happens a lot. Duolingo is too slow, right? And then immediately the other criticism is Duolingo needs to spend more time on grammar. So, do you want Duolingo to be faster? Or do you want Duolingo to slow down and spend more time on grammar? You see what I mean by this? Like, that's the type of stuff that I've been talking about for a while. Sometimes fast or slow may not necessarily be relevant to the value that you place on your comprehension. So the question is, do you like it fast or slow, or do you want more grammar? Because there are a lot of times when you're at the developer standpoint of a program, there are very objectively non-correlating things that you can do. You can't. It's very difficult to have the cake and eat it at the same time. Anyway, so that was just a digression, but the way you talked about, the way you phrased it, like it did a bad job of explaining grammar. Yeah, right. It's a paradoxical statement made by people who haven't generally thought through the problem statement thoroughly. Exactly. So when you had that extra consideration, like, oh yeah, it's bad with grammar, but you also don't feel like they're actively trying to do that. That is it. That's what's insightful about what that tells me, right? And that's kind of like expecting. It's one of those things like, oh man, I expect to. Oh, here's another paradox of learning. Sometimes I want to passively, as an easy, passively learn actively. I think I'm being a little too generalizing here, but I'm paraphrasing. So people want all the benefits of actively learning, but they want it in a way that is passively, it's easy and passive. So that's still a somewhat paradoxical request when it comes to understanding how learning process works in any scope of imagination, right? Like any type of understanding, even a superficial understanding of human condition and learning. It's a very hard problem to solve, and Duolingo has largely perfected the problem they set out to solve. Perfected isn't the right word to use, since I don't think any resource is perfect. Excellent. but it's the closest word I can use to formulate my thoughts this late. That's absolutely, I'm on board. I understand. Like, to me, I don't know if you were here earlier. I talked about this in a similar way that you said. Duolingo is not only not, I'm sorry for the double negatives too, because it's a little bit late too. Duolingo is not only not good, is what lots of people do, like not good, right? Not good. So Duolingo is not just good at what it does or designed to do, it's so good at what it does, the unforeseen consequence of what it does well came with side effects. And I was expounding upon the concept of complacency. Complacency and its role in how it hinders, how it supports consistency, right? It supports consistency. However, when you become complacent, you also start becoming more and more passive in the process. And what is very passive is a habit. Right? And learning does require it to be active. So what happens over time is Duolingo is so good at creating consistency that it takes a very short amount of time before the repetition and the mechanics of it becomes passive. As in, you have developed a habit and it's no longer an active process. So without it being active, you take less and less in. Less and less happens. So Duolingo actually does this so fantastically well that people actually stop learning. Because now it's a habit. Like, it's like getting up and eating your cereal, your favorite cereal. The habit, it's so good that now they need to come up with diversifying things so that it can become active again. So they're constantly needing to change everything. Like maybe every 3 months. It's kind of like live service models. Without it changing, it can no longer be active. There's nothing that they're engaging that's different anymore. It's a rudimentary pattern that you're doing. In fact, some people, I demonstrated it to myself. I asked myself, after 30 days, can I answer all the questions without even listening to the prompt, without looking at the prompt, and only looking at the answers provided? I can. So I learned absolutely nothing. Like, if you become fluent in the design language, which lots of people can intuit very, very well because it's not designed to be complex in design language. It's dependent on the active nature of the user. So if the user becomes habit, you can just do it without even knowing anything. Yeah, Duolingo is also a great exercise in the human mind's ability to solve a problem. Exactly. Oh my gosh. Dang. We learn the system itself and its rules, and then we master that rather than the language. Exactly. Which is what the intent is. It's a constant battle between keeping the system addicting and effective. Yeah, like you just said. No, like you just said, Shady. You just summarized it. You just summarized it. It's why video games get completed and then get revisited when dissonance happens. Like way down the line, when a video game becomes no longer familiar, it becomes engaging again. So the whole idea, all the criticisms, is rooted in actually Duolingo is so good at what it does that it creates the problem. It's like things get old so fast because it is so habit forming. It's so engaging that you no longer have to try. And yeah, and that's where I have been working on for a while now. So how do I make Duolingo more engaging? That's why I spent like 11 hours having discussions and stuff. It's to enrich the process, I suppose. But man, yeah, the dualities, the paradox, the constant ebb and flow between what something is great as habit forming, like self-motivation. It lowers the effector filters, right? The effectors that stop you from doing something, and then being effective. Efficacious requires an active input of effort. And if something is incredibly also addicting and consistent forming, things that are consistent tends to be less and less effortless, because over time, consistency removes that effort. You become so efficient. It's one of the brilliant things about humans. What Duolingo does really well is catharsis. It provides a lot of catharsis. It provides great review because it only is there to remind you of what you probably know as well, right? It's one of the exception. It's meditative. So if you ever want to like meditate really well, this is the type of thing you're looking for. Things that removes all of that need for input effort. But when you're actively learning, you have to somehow engage in that. It's supposed to be slightly stressful, but positive stress. We're talking about like, dopamine induced stress, not cortisol induced stress. Things that tackle that. And it's crazy. So I'm glad we're on the same page, but I honestly think I don't even need to lead you. We probably have similar thoughts already. Thanks for it's actually really refreshing. Sorry if I might be sounding like an instant fan or something. I would totally love to see your approaches to programming and whatnot in the future. I think you have something that can reflect a lot of what I'm saying. My 82 days I don't think there's a single person that was able to capture the same sentiments that I have when it comes to analyzing the design language and the intent of Duolingo's design. And then its integration and interface as a learning product, both psychologically and pragmatically. Duolingo's success has also made it so many other systems mimic it and try to teach language in the same way, but it just amplifies the issue. Exactly. I think the one thing that the language learning community can really benefit from is increased diversity in competitive design. Like it's kind of like in the game when a gold standard comes up, right? And it supersedes the one thing that causes high adoption. That high adoption tends to form the necessity to maintain its popularity. Like, for example, pop music. Pop music often deals with the accessibility of a thing. So if you excel so hard at the accessibility, it becomes ubiquitous. And because of the pragmatic use of business models and whatnot, it deflates the quality of downstream objectives if you can acquire adoption, right? And Duolingo has succeeded so well that it is hard to compete with it. If your next competition if it's not Duolingo, it's TikTok, right? So then somehow you have to transition and bridge that addiction, that quality of design that causes consistent adoption into something that is perhaps productive or useful, that identifies you from the other products. And now it's one of those things. You have a product that has a very consistent trend that lines up with whatever the current behavioral demands of the current situation, like kind of like FromSoft games with Souls games, right? If you capture that thing, then without competition, the trend will continue until it produces an exaggerated amplification of any drawbacks or things that it has, and it's hard to overcome. it takes another paradigm shift in design in order to like really push it in a different direction. And I hope that there will be other competitive products that don't simply try to mirror this in a sense, but somehow innovate on it. At the moment, most of the sentiments in order to address this issue is to tear down Duolingo, right? So that's deconstructive criticism. If you tear down Duolingo, the next product becomes the one that exacerbates its shortcomings. Instead of promoting competitors, like trying to promote and bolster innovation of competitive apps and competitive designs, at the moment, at least in my opinion, the sentiment is to tear down the king or to tear down the gold standards as opposed to building upon them or learning how to innovate away from them, like divergent competitive designs. I think tearing something down only introduces the second best thing, and that second best thing will come with its own caveats. At least that's how I feel right now. Most people are more deconstructive in order to elevate the position of a competitor as opposed to elevating the competitor. And I've been a staunch suggestion of people like Renshu was mentioned by Day 9. That sounds like a great alternative if it fits the appropriate user. Anki, right? LingQ, Babel, Memrise, Rosetta Stone, Bushu, even like Tofuku offers products. So many things, at least in my opinion. I wasn't expecting to have such an enjoyable experience tonight. The universe works in strange ways. Life is strange, isn't it? Life is strange. I can't even say that right now. I could say, no, I can't say life. Life wa omoshiroi desu ne. I don't know how to say life. All right. Life wa omoshiroi desu ne. How do you say life? I could go with katakana and just say laifu. Thanks. I really appreciate this. I wasn't expecting to derail like this really hard. Rarely is it so hard. That same logic applies to people as well. It came from the idea that you have to be cutthroat and tear down those, that you view as competition rather than praise what they do well and learn from their missteps or perceived missteps. Yeah, exactly. And I think I even want to add one more to that. That same logic, when blended with self-righteousness, right, and a lack of emotional intelligence, ends up being more of a vendetta that is passed off as objective truth. Like, oh, the objective truth is that Duolingo is too slow. That's not an objective. That's not facts at all. That's a perception of, you know what I mean? Like, it becomes to the point that it's also quite dangerous because the internet is also very susceptible to the echo chamber, which a lot of times I think there's only a lose-lose situation in echo chambers. Not only do the person deprive themselves of whatever satisfaction they have, they also deprive themselves of tools and potential competitive tools that will help them in the future, or may help them in the future, or give them some, like, it lowers accessibility. When you're tearing down something, it only lowers overall accessibility to anyone. So meanwhile, when you care about language learning, in my opinion, language learners are suggesting that for the betterment of emotional language learners, for the betterment of language learning is to reduce the number of tools available. I think that's kind of, I'm paraphrasing because it's getting super late, but yeah, I think there's a leap of logic in a lot of this, and I personally think it's a lose-lose when it's also mixed. That type of logic is also mixed with emotionally charged feelings from a vocal minority. In this case, maybe inochi? I'm not entirely sure since Japanese has like 50 different words for life. Oh. Depending on what sort of like daily life, way of life, your life has a spirit. Okay, we're not gonna go down. I will take your, I think inochi works. Which one is that? Which one is inochi? Is it way of life? Spiritual? I kind of like the spiritual one. Your life as a human. Wow, that's awfully specific. Okay. That's fair. That's fair. We're fine. We're fine.
あ、すみません。ペン。
Also, by the way, I really appreciate this. I'm also kind of hyper aware of time, and it's also a weekday, right? It's also a weekday, so definitely do not feel obligated to expend any time that would take yourself away from your workday. I do have to make it clear that I don't actually have a daily occupation at the moment, so I don't actually have schedule commitments outside of whatever this is. So hopefully I'm not taking you away from your time. Like fate and life. Oh, that works. I like it. I like it. I think it works, yeah, since we're talking about, yeah, a sort of fate. Yeah, fate encounter. I've been doing this for, I've been like interacting in this way, very obviously interacting with this way for probably over 5 or 6 years. But at the same time, the last time I've had this resonance with another person, even given all these years, was 18 years ago. 18 years ago when I met the friends that I mentioned. When it comes to the level of resonance, as in mannerisms, speaking, it's not to say that this is like the only way to have friends or something. It's just, it's very uncommon to have this like of serendipitous encounter, especially given the circumstances. We're on Twitch. I'm using Duolingo. Somehow we both like red pandas. Like there is a lot of weirdness going on here that even I wouldn't say, as someone who focuses on lots of behavioralism, like corollary behavioralism and pre-selection and choices and much like that. I still think it's an incredibly hard to believe coincidence. So that's kind of why I don't know how to process this right now. I don't usually often find myself speechless when hearing the comments of someone, especially when you are restricted to typing in general. That's... Are you sure you're not ChatGPT? Imagine my... I mean, it's a very real, funny situation, right? Imagine if you've been online for so long that someone had done a machine model of your diction. So then you naturally use that diction to mirror someone and have a conversation with them. I think that's a nightmare scenario, but honestly, after seeing like some of the stuff, it's a little kind of creepy. But I don't know how much you know. I mean, you're in programming, so I'm more than probably tugging on some nightmare scenarios in the back of your hypothetical mind regarding the accelerated pace in which one can at least superficially, if not pretty in depth, mirror someone's mannerisms. Mannerisms to like mirror in this type of encounter, to be like talking to yourself as opposed to someone else. I agree. I tune into a lot of streams, but I tend to get bored or lurk, then bail after a bit since the conversation hits a natural breaking point after a while. Ours has somehow managed to avoid that breaking point so far. Honestly though, I am ceremoniously attempting to break the point, only because I have a higher concern for how much time I'm taking from you, as opposed to concern with my completion of the lesson. I don't know if you probably can read the subtext. I feel like you can probably read the subtext at this point, because you seem like a similarly perceptive person, that I'm probably using... If you called me out on trying to use an excuse for completing my lesson as a way to not pull more longer discussions, that you're probably very on the point. Yeah, and large language models. Oh. Large language models, man.
はありますか
I have these little concerns. So here's a thought.
ペンはありません。
This guy has been looking for his pen for quite some time, waiting for his pen. Yeah. So, what you call it? I do have one caveat that I'm gonna avoid in the future. My friends and I, right? These friends that I'm talking about, there's a time when you kind of like just run out of things to say to each other because of a high level of resonance. Oftentimes you get to this like complacent manner in which you do the thing where, oh yeah, that's a good idea, maybe we should do it sometime, and it never happens. Like, oh yeah, I knew, I was waiting for you, but you were waiting for me, but we were waiting for each other, we're okay, like we're very agreeable people. So it's one of those things, and so I worry if you go too far, you just run out of things to say. It's like, hey, have you seen this? I know what you're going to say. Yes. Like, okay. So we went over everything we talked about the last like 3 months. So I guess I'll see you in another month so we can collect enough experiences to exchange the same semblance of, hey, what do you think about this? Okay, it's my turn now. I'm gonna tell you what you're going to think about it, and then I ask you for the one thing and you're gonna tell me exactly what I'm going to think about it. That's usually how my interactions with my friends go, like especially these guys. Like we take turns finishing our concepts, right? Like, oh, I'll let you go now, like, what do you think about this scene? And I wouldn't say anything, I wouldn't say anything reacting to their comment, but only continue their sentiments, because most of the ideas overlap. So naturally you end up running out of things to say because not enough events have occurred anymore. Like there's no like observable events to make commentary about. And that's kind of why my friends and I don't talk as much as we typically do. This is a familiar story. I'll be back in your stream once I've mastered Mandarin so we can talk about how I compare. Not before I master Mandarin, and then we can both share. No, I'm just kidding. How do you feel about your Japanese?
ペンはありません。ペンは
Speaking of the word master, I've always felt that I don't feel very comfortable ever saying like I've mastered anything. How do you feel about the word master?
とペンはありません。
Wait. Not
とペンはありません。
Okay. I think I'm probably gonna end the thing today here somewhere.
東口
I've always been a really apprehensive. I'm happy with it, but I still study it every day.
の前
Oh, that's my sentiments indeed.
に
You took the words out. You took the thought out of my mouth, but I agree. If someone asked me, they asked me this question already. How do you feel? How do you feel about your progress? Right? I had this question a couple times, and my answer generally says, the short answer is happy. The long answer is I can do it every day of my life. Doesn't really matter. I'm happy with it. If I'm happy with it, I can continue to do it. I worry about where it is in the bigger scope of things. So, short answer is I'm always happy. I feel happy about my progress all the time because I like learning. I continue to do it. I don't think I have English mastered, and so I don't think I will ever be comfortable saying I've mastered any language. With other things, I think the desire for improvement is more important than being, as long as being claimed a mastery. As long as I'm improving, then I'm achieving my goal. You know, I was gonna talk about that, but all right, fine. You can steal my thunder. I'll let you have my. I said that, okay? I said that. That was me. I can't. The last 3 days, when someone told me like, oh, so what are you gonna do when you master Japanese? So someone asked me that. I think it might have been Gabriel actually. Gabriel asked me, what am I gonna do when I master Japanese? This was a question 2 days ago. When I master Japanese, right? And my first thought was, well, first of all, maybe it's imposter syndrome, maybe it's not. However, considering the realistic nature of how I feel about my English competency, which I do feel I'm comfortable enough to say I'm above average. Maybe like graduate level, maybe perhaps that's above average. But I can truly honestly say that if I can't even be comfortable in saying I have a mastery of English as a potentially obvious native English speaker, perhaps. Technically, English is not my first language. But if I can't even do that, the logic would dictate that there is no semblance of being able to master Japanese, according to me. So when you're asking me, what am I going to do when I master Japanese? Well, I'm probably going to be dead. So the natural inclination is, I like to reach a place where I'm proficient enough that I can continue to explore other languages, and greater in a concurrent, and continue to study all of them concurrently. So my understanding of Japanese bolsters my understanding and appreciation for English, while it bolsters Mandarin, and so on. So the idea is not necessarily for the concern of mastery, but the concern for improvement. And ultimately, even superseding improvement is happiness. I don't think there is any sentiment stronger than self-satisfaction, in the sense that it's not dependent on other people's affirmation in order to seek a feedback loop to improvement. Self-improvement produce more happiness, happiness produce more improvements, and so on. So rather than being concerned with words like mastery, it's often just being proficient enough to provide an endless supply of happiness. And like that is it. So the sentiment when you said, well, I don't think I'll ever be comfortable saying you mastered a language, because if you think about how you scope things that you already think, you chose English. And I love that. I've said that a bunch of times. I'm like, yeah, let's be a little realistic. There is a like really weird alternative universe where someone asked me this. I think Sub-Zero asked me this. They asked me if I hypothetically could trade off a language. Trade off a language, like negotiate by trading off a language. What would I do, right? Like what would I pick or something? And then I had to ask so many specific modifiers, like conditions, like if I trade off my language, does that bar me from learning the language I trade off, etc.? Like, you know that. And in the end of the day, I can already anticipate that we have very similar caveats. So I'm kind of curious. Would you, how would you go about it if you could trade off? Like you could trade up. It's a really interesting thought question. I think I've gotten some of the most interesting and intellectually stimulating hypotheticals, like thought experiments going on. My caveat was, am I barred? One of the questions I asked is part of the rule, am I barred from relearning, like learning the language that I trade off? You can trade up. So basically they're offering to trade up. You can exchange your current language, like English, for maybe 2 others. So I was starting to negotiate. I'm like, well, okay, I can make a slight argument for 2 if I'm taking a pragmatic approach for its influence. But I would trade it for 3 in a heartbeat, because statistically, and then I would pick one that would allow me to go back to acquiring what I've lost. So it got really I got a little sweaty with that. So you were offered 2 languages. So according to the guy's hypothetical, you're offered 2 languages in exchange for your native language. How would you approach this?
並びませんか。
東口の雨に前に並びませんか? I haven't been
すみ
saying
ません。ペンはありますか？ペン。
That kept me up all evening, by the way. I actually continued to think about that hypothetical.
すみません。ペンはありますか?
I hope I won't ruin your... I think the question is largely dependent on the language that you know and would be trading, right? Knowing English, it's almost impossible to understate the advantage that I have knowing the lingua franca of our time. Yeah, so that's the approach that I went. So how can I compensate for the loss of the advantage that you can leverage as the de facto lingua franca, right? So I went about it in a way that, how could I leverage all the statistical identifiers I understand about the pervasive influence of the other languages? So I actually took that statistical know-how. So right now, you know, from like some cursory article that I picked up, the influence is about like around 35% are native English, right? And its influence is that 65% are non-native, right? So if I could leverage how its reach in second, like how big English's reach is, I could argue that when Spanish is pulled in, it doesn't draw this much. It's still greater than 50 for here, but Spanish is pulling up pretty high. It's like 30%. And then there's French, right? But then you have to cover the spectrum. Then you have to cover the spectrum of, can you increase the influence by taking an Eastern language? So then I ended up coming with the idea that, okay, I'll pick a Eastern language that has the most influence by an arbitrary metric, which I was using natives versus non-natives, and I picked a Western and Eastern language in order to encapsulate the flexibility of accessing the other related languages in order to recapitulate and still take advantage of the loss of the leverage of the main language being my English, being my name language, in order to maximize influence, right? Maximize influence, which both serves as a psychological advantage for my case, and as well as a pragmatic standpoint. So trying to maximize psychological applications and pragmatic applications, both like society-wise and whatnot. What do you have? So it also ties into your living situation. Oh, that's fair. I'm still in the United States. Oh, I already asked that too. So the person said you cannot transport yourself. So then I had to make a rationale for Spanish. Yeah, that is correct. I already asked that question as well. I asked him, does that also give me a free airplane ticket to relocation, and does that somehow uproot my life? If so, trading isn't that useful for you? Yeah, if I could relocate to anywhere else and have established life in that country, then that will also heavily skew the decision. Absolutely. And on top of that, if I can transplant my life somehow and still in your current race. Exactly. So in this case, I've already asked that question and you cannot. So you stay in it. So if I had to make a decision, I would choose one that has the highest influence in my current state, in my current socioeconomic status, right? Like the environment, and including considering my heritage and where I am right now, right? In order to have the closest access to the common language in where we reside. So those are excellent points. And I think there's more, socioeconomic things to weigh before I pick a language, which also plays into the socioeconomic situation. Best to weigh to, right, exactly. So in the end, I had to weigh a lot of things, but you know, for the sake of fun and social experiments, right? For the sake of social experiments at the time, I took whatever statistics I had and favored the thing about what is the most pragmatic and psychological thing I can pull up. And basically I went with how many people can I connect with that will match the common language pool of English. And then immediately, you're exchanging mastery, by the way. What this person offered was you're exchanging the language, your one language, English, which for 2. I would stretch for 3, really. I would like negotiate for 3. Largely because I'm taking into consideration the poll. But naturally, if you have the mastery of those 3, you're hoping that what you learn could give you like at least a medium ground to a reacquiring English. At least that's how I would try to do it. In that case, if I'm required, then it'd be Spanish, and after that, I don't really know. French is likely to follow up, yep, because of the massive amount of overlap between it and English. It would make learning English again much easier. Exactly. So I would at least facilitate that reacquisition of English so that you can upsell. You get free upsell, right? Or not really free, but. And then I thought about if I got 3 languages, that's why I was trying to leverage 3 languages. I would acquire an Eastern language, right? In order to pull in, it's probably Mandarin. You start with Mandarin and then you pull out, expand from Mandarin, right? So it was being greedy, but it was a fun thought experiment. I could have went as far as saying I'm okay with Spanish and Mandarin. That's where I settled on. Like, it's being greedy. It's really being greedy because there's cultural dissonance, right? I'm still living in the United States, so technically that's a diminished return. That's like investing in potential value. But ultimately, realistically speaking, if you suddenly become a Spanish speaker and you're still residing in the United States, you're going to have to apply for English, and English will take away from the value and application of being a master in Mandarin or Japanese. They're not geographically and socioeconomically accessible to each other. It's kind of like me choosing to dedicate my entire life, uproot my entire life, and go to Japan and become a Japanese person right now. Then all the values of the things that I've invested in my life then gets diminished in return. So it's kind of like, ooh, such an interesting question. I'm sorry. Like, I'm talking about like pure science fiction at this point, but it was such an interesting question. I don't know if anyone really captured the depth of the spiraling vortex of things you have to consider, much of the things that you have already shared. I think all those questions came up simultaneously the moment someone, a person that I've come to know very well now, Sub-Zero. Oh, by the way, Sub-Zero's learning Mandarin, or going to, or trying to learn Mandarin. Sub-Zero's in uni right now, and they're like trying to finish up whatever they need to do at uni so that they can spend their vacation or like their summertime to focus on Mandarin. They are Norwegian descent, I think. He speaks Norwegian as well, and a really great command of English. I would love to hear how you guys communicate in Mandarin in the future, because I think for the most part he's have some background in Mandarin already, like to some extent. They want to focus on that. So interesting. That's the person, by the way. That is the person who presented that hypothetical.
あ、すみません。ペンはありますか？は、ありますか？あ、すみません。ペンはありますか？
Sure. Man, I've been stuck on the pen. Yeah. I think we have a bunch of people. The people I'm mentioning, like Gabriel, there's two others like Lotus. Oh, actually Lotus is in your time frame. In your time zone. He's actually in California, and Indy is in Texas. So there are a bunch of people who like are really into this, and they have they're interested in Japanese. So you already have Japanese in the bag, and I don't know if they have any interest in moving to Mandarin, but I've been spending most of these days, like the vast majority of these days, talking back and forth with these people, and it's been incredibly refreshing and motivating. And it really all started with Duolingo, actually. Both of them actually have used Duolingo to an extended amount of time, largely taking a more sound approach in critique of it. So that's kind of the bonding. That's the bonding platform for pre-selecting people. The people who hate Duolingo, they come by and say that and then leave. That's usually the vast majority. But whenever you get the winners, it's kind of nice. I can't wait to use it for something else, like video games and stuff. If you don't like making content, honestly, I would love to see, like, have you ever made content? I'm sure your life is very busy, but I honestly haven't ever met, like, haven't had an opportunity to talk to someone like this. Like, you could imagine a conversation with John Green and Hank Green going away this. You know what I mean? Like, it takes a lot of privileges and life situations in order to have the luxury of making content without a safety net of a career, right, and whatnot, and other things to provide experience and stuff to talk about. But I do honestly think that if I sat in a room with someone like Hank or John, these would be the type of discussions that I would have. But I don't command a lot of influence, so you can't just walk up to John and Hank and say like, hey dude, let's sit here and use up 7 hours of your time in which John is helping fight tuberculosis, like finding, you know, negotiations to curb tuberculosis in developing countries, right? Like that kind of thing. Like in a way, I find I have some ambivalence in entertaining my own selfish needs to find a conversation with them while knowing the content and the things that they're working on. But it is really refreshing to find someone who may be just as accessible. Oh, there's just so much more to talk about, but I digress. I digress a little too much. Sorry. My apologies. Their family gatherings must be honestly be incredible. I have no doubt. I mean, even the episodes that they have where they meet together, you know what I mean? Like the Greens brothers together, the occasional special where they finally get to like hang out for a minute, it's ridiculous. It's pretty ridiculous. Wholesome fun. Online now, I have been entertaining a lot of myself. I don't know if the conversation is going to be the same with other people, but there are a lot of content creators. It's a really big trend. It's actually a micro trend, like a self-contained niche trend of its own, of interracial couples, right? Especially ones that have English as a bridging language. I've been watching so many of them. Like the one you described, there's this one, it's the girl is American and the guy is Japanese, and they do like these cute little popular trend things like Pokemon names and whatnot, and they do skits with each other, right? So is this like German Vietnamese couple. They're viral, so if any of these ring a bell, there is a chance you might have already come across the same stuff. It's so interesting when they react. Recently, there's this Japanese Malay couple, and they use English as the common language. Actually, the Malaysian person also speaks Japanese to the Japanese person. So there are so many examples of wonderful dualities, and I love seeing them talk about the cross-cultural things, exchange that they have every day. And that's what you and your partner, when you're describing you and your partner, that's kind of how I imagine it. It would be wonderful to, obviously, if your partner is comfortable with it. Vlogging like that stuff is fantastic, at least. I think it's almost quintessentially representative of how the other 50% or so of Americans actually live. Like, that's like underappreciated in my opinion. Like, what do I do every day? Well, actually, this is the most English I speak every day. But English is not the primary mother tongue that I use at home. I actually use Fujianese with my parents. So when stream goes off, when I utter another word, it typically is Fujianese. Although I'm illiterate, so I don't want to get anyone's hopes up in misunderstanding that I can actually read Mandarin, which I can't. Which, by the way, what are your thoughts? You've used Duolingo before. I feel like Duolingo needs to replace all this Gen 1. I know there's legacy in this, but this Gen 1, man, where's my Falstaff at? I'm just saying. This is probably Gen 1. Gen 1 Falstaff. Come on. Come on, man. I need that moody, you know, the half eye. I need that, like, moody half eye. And the little, like, he's basically this shape with the scarf. There are a lot of things that come up where there are strong cultural differences. Yes, indeed. Which leads to some interesting conversations. I can only imagine. It does stand out a bit, doesn't it? Yeah, it does. There was one. Okay, real talk. There was one where there's a girl eating something, or like, no, a girl in a pool. So a girl is supposed to be in a pool and you're supposed to talk about swimming, right? And this guy here is in the pool with the girl. Like, you know, this bear is in the pool. And the prompt was about, do you want to swim? Should we swim? Or something. I'm like, okay. That didn't quite age very well, but Gen 1, man. Gen 1. Gen 1. A bit sketch there, Duo. Yes, indeed. Wine, oh, what the heck? Is this? No, this is not sign. No, sign, oh. Oh, onegaishimasu. That works.
お願いします。
Onegaishimasu. Sure. Let's see. Bando no sign. So you've been to Japan already, like so many times, even after your partner moved to the United States. How often do you go to Japan? Real talk. I imagine you and your partner keeps to date on the current like climate, socioeconomic climate of Japan. I've been keeping track of that quite a lot. It's not so optimistic, if you know what I mean. On a more serious topic. Around once a year for a month or two, I see. Oh, okay. A month to 2 months a year. I imagine you have extended family now in Japan.
Oh.
Yeah, Japan hasn't been in better situations. Not even to mention the recent like natural disasters, right? Natural events. I really do I love the Japanese culture. It's such an isolated microcosm. Japan is such an isolated microcosm. Even with the opening or the maybe the pressure opening of American influence and involvement, still an incredible, almost historical, like our lifetimes, right? Our lifetimes, isolated microcosm. It's such a contrasting thing between being American and being Japanese in that regards too. Like on the one hand, American culture is basically the punching bag for any form of superficial or depth perception from foreigners, and yet Japan is like this mystical microcosm that is both potentially resonating in its random desirable qualities, but at the same time, when you think of it as a whole, it's almost identifiably Japan and nowhere else. It's such a strange, weird place. Do you usually stream this? Like, I don't, Jamie. I'm talking to, like, I got caught up talking to Shady here for so long, and honestly, I'm not sure if I want to stop, but yeah, sort of. With the same-sex couple situation, there's some boundaries that we have to set up when it comes to our life in Japan. Oh, I see. That was a big part of the contention. Oh, that's fair. Yeah, that's a really tough hard position. I could even say like, wow, That can be very tough. Yeah, it is the compromise of the conformist, you know, the strong, but for all its pros and cons, like the strong conformity, right? Yeah, that's understandable. Oh, it's nice to find that you and your partner had come to a negotiation that works, I hope. Sainga, and yeah, Jamie, wait, are you early or late, Jamie? What time is it for you? You're West Coast, aren't you? Sorry, I'm just caught up in so much discussion right now. so much, so engaged. Don't get me wrong, I'm like learning that, like, I don't know if I'm gonna remember this stuff, but totally worth it. Sign ga hoshii desu. Nope, east. Oh, that's right. Jamie, you're the one in New York, right? Jamie, we talked about this. You're a heckin' New Yorker, aren't you? Yeah, you're the New Yorker. Yeah, we already talked about this. I'm also a New Yorker, technically. Don't you dare shun New Yorkers who leave New York, okay? Nah, you can probably do that. I'm like the least New Yorker most New Yorkers would think. Other than like being Chinese. Imagine saying things like, I like Philadelphia better. No, I don't want to start a flame war here. I don't go to Philadelphia very often. I actually spend more time in New York City than Philadelphia. Good. Listen, are you trying to tell do you want me to start the fire? Because I think New Jersey is a pretty cool place. I'm just kidding. I just I don't want to start playing more. I'm playing on so many. Yeah, you're happy with what we settled on. It took me a bit at the start, and I watched a lot of videos and researched the topic in Japanese to understand the situation as much as I could from his perspective and his life, so that I could reframe my position on the situation. Well, I would love to meet his family outside of a friend he has. I understand the difficulty that exists there. Yep. That's totally understandable. It's, you know what I have to say to that? That only tells me that your love is that much stronger. If you know what I mean. Like, what is a more endearing and utterly unfathomable amount of affection between two people if you can even negotiate something like that? Especially when considering the prospect of an Asian culture, because that is from someone that comes from a Chinese traditional Chinese household, even though I was born in the United States, that is an unbelievably powerful trust and respect between two individuals. Because family is that's beautiful, honestly. I'm glad to hear that you and your partner were able to navigate such a... I stray away from the word sacrifice, but sacrifice. Compromise. It's quite beautiful. Thank you for sharing, by the way. I would move mountains for him and the sacrifice he made and his willingness to give up everything to be with you. And that he would do the same. That's so beautiful. That's incredibly romantic. Wow. Honestly, I feel really privileged to actually even hear that from someone that exists. I honestly, the things you're describing is almost like fairy tale. Your life is literally a rom-com. Not really a rom-com, but a romance drama. What the heck? Like, I usually joke about my ups and downs with, like, you know, high functioning things and how it made social awkward situations and like unintended like relational consequences and stuff that makes anime sound reasonable. But your story, that deserves a memoir. Honestly, that's something you read. Honestly, wait, let me think about it. I think I've recently watched like 2 or 3 movies. That makes for a great movie script. I would love to. We'll revisit this in another 20 years. I don't actually know how old you are, but for me, I'm 37. So ring me up when you decide to write a memoir or something, because that type of stuff, in my opinion, is incredible. It's stuff of best-selling novels, really. It's quite inspiring. You're 32? Oh, we largely belong to the same generational generational mindset as well. Yeah. That's amazing. Obviously, in an ideal world, I would wish for everything to work out. But that definitely shapes one's perspective quite a bit.
ペン
Are we still stuck on pen? Yeah, we're still
アー
stuck
ティ
on
スト
pen.
と話したいです。
Anashtaitis. Alright. What do we have? Oh, moto. Oh yeah, moto. More soy sauce, please. We gotta use more soy sauce. Ja. Mata. Oh yeah, right. We have the phrase mata. Mata and mo. Mata. Oh no, it's not. Sorry, not mata. Sorry. Yeah, we still have mata and mo to come up. Ja. Kitakuchi. Kitakuchi machimashou. Yeah, sure.
東口でバンドを待ちましょ
Okay. Which band? What am I saying? Which Oh no. We should wait. We should wait for the band at the east exit.
アーティストと話したいです。
Okay.
ケンさん、どこに並びますか？
Okay. Where are you going to wait? Yeah. Wait. どこに並びますか? Okay. Oh. 誰と話したいですか? Yeah, sure.
話か
Okay. It's fine.
どの
Some of the translations that Duolingo uses are interesting. I would have went with a more casual let's wait for the band at the east exit, but I suppose we should. Is there... Yes, I agree. Oftentimes I got a little nitpicky here when people talk about translations. And I know I'm not making a commentary on yours. I think the common colloquialism is for using the word translations. I have habitually conditioned myself a little bit to say that Duolingo has many interpretations, right? And you highlighted one of the interpretations, for sure. And my guess was exactly as you said. When they say we should, it was to capture the essence of politeness in English. I agree with you. And then also when they said, they also introduced sen, like, so masen, and ka, right? As would you like to do something? So, and if I had to think of a way to encapsulate the essence of it, I understand, much like Mashol, when they say we should, I get it, because I actually say that a lot. Instead of say let's go or let's wait, and that's a casual sense, right? Let's go, let's wait. We should wait. And I kind of like their interpretation. I wouldn't have considered it, because my first thought would be let's wait. That would be the casual. So if I was with friends, yeah, when I'm in a professional setting, like with like colleagues or something at a university or something, yeah, I can see what they were going with we should. I definitely can see where they're going with it. Yeah, that's I agree with you 100%. That is actually, you're basically writing all my content, which it's almost as though you already watched all the content. I don't even think you need to watch anything, because you probably can already supersede all my comments that I've already made over these 82 days. You might as well just write down all your thoughts about Duolingo, and I can probably say I will probably agree with 95% of them without hesitation. And they probably have already came up. The observations you made probably have already came up. I'm actually very genuinely curious how many observations you'll make that lines up perfectly with what I have mentioned so far. You could do this too, technically, if you were able to juggle all of this. I would love to see how close can I either anticipate your observations, or you can anticipate my observations. It's so weird. It's so weird. Honestly, play clever as a way to cover the topic without a lesson to go over it. Exactly. Exactly. They're sticking to their design philosophy of being implicit, right? Patterned implicitly. And that's why that's what I've been engaged with Duolingo. So I've been more engaged with the design choices of Duolingo. Like, oh, you know what? They could have done this, but they didn't. And the kanji section is even more, there's so many more deep cuts in the kanji section where they decide like, oh, okay, that's an interesting way. Because they recently updated the kanji section where they try to introduce like overlap kanji. So their way is they're staggering. So they introduce new kanji, right? And then they introduce another new kanji. But meanwhile, when this is staggered, they reuse kanji that relates to when they were introducing it. And then they repeat this pattern over and over again. So new input, old input, but it's new, but it relates to a previous unit. And sometimes it can splinter into two places. So then what they do is they slowly build up all the overlap. By doing that, it removes the burden of retroactively needing to figure out what overlaps. So what happens is that design makes it so that you intuit based on looking for radicals. Even their choices in the kanji section associates, a lot of times people call it trickery because it's like it's very similar and you're doing it deliberately to trick you. But what it's really doing, in my opinion, is introducing the idea of radical spotting. And I do this naturally already now because I don't have to do it there. So the question is though, does anyone pick up on this? So for example, they would introduce this character, which is actually Ki, right? It's tree, but this has never been introduced. But it's been introduced as a right? Mokuyobi. But however, they found other instances where they can use this. So this, they slowly trickle in all the instances where this kanji is being used. This kanji, so they introduce he, right? He, all the days, nihon, right? So that's how they're doing it. They're implicitly telling you, hey, my guys, all right, so many contexts. And then they focus a lot on counters because all the numbers that they teach you at first, right? All the numbers they teach you at first all have variances of their phonetics. So I think it's pretty brilliant. I think my favorite actual part is and I haven't even gotten to stories yet. From what I read or what I've seen demoed, stories are incredibly underrated. Because it takes you need for Japanese, for stories, you need to get to like so far in before you get it. But the kanji section is absolutely fantastic. It is so fantastic, in my opinion. Arguably, it's a little slow, but I kind of get it because I'm so fascinated. I'm a little over enthusiastic about kanji, so I need to hold off. But generally speaking, the implicit method to the madness is fantastic. Like, I do not confuse things like I don't know, like shichikatsu, right? Shichikatsu and like gogatsu, right? Shikatsu and gogatsu. You don't have these. And then maybe like something like daigetsu. Like daigetsu. You don't get confused with daigetsu. And then you don't get this confused with kimasu. Sorry, I'm using the romaji now because it takes me a while to write things. It's crazy. I actually think it's so underrated, in my opinion. The kanji section is so underrated in Duolingo. That sounds like a good approach to them, though. It's like the witness with the rules being implicitly learned. Yep, without outright. It's gamification, right? So a lot of times the criticism is that language learners do not treat game learning, the heavy reliance on implicit design, because a lot of times adult oriented, like secondary language acquisition, in my opinion, comes from the perspective of later in life, and adult language is adult learning tends to be incredibly explicit and structured. So you need like grammatical points, things to increase the efficiency of the thing. Meanwhile, gaming implicitness kind of sparks the age-old question of input intuition in the sense that this input is often implicit. It's mechanical. It's pattern recognition. It's raw input as opposed to something like some sort of more comprehensive input, right? And that is gamification. Witness puzzle games, they have to take these into consideration, right? Constantly changing the formula, progressively stacking on ideas, and then constant maturation of existing ideas. You establish rules that you must discover, and those rules then mature and interact with newer rules, right? So that's where that's their design, because it's Duolingo, it's gamification. So the language, a lot of the critique comes from the idea of a scholarly approach. It's the one, that age-old question about like structure, kind of like a more intellectually forward way of explicit learning, which resonates a lot with older like more experienced people, because you can leverage your previous experiences, you can leverage your knowledge and experiences, right? But in this case, if you are able to appreciate the cleverness, in my opinion, the cleverness in how they're trying to be more of a game of discovery in pattern, you can kind of get to the idea like, oh yeah, I see where they're going with this. Is it ideal? Perhaps not, but it's kind of different and interesting. And I've been having a blast. I almost want to wish it's like The Witness, or like playing a game like Talos Principle. I almost wish Duolingo would move faster, not in the sense of learning Japanese, but Duolingo needs more mechanics. And when I mean mechanics, I don't mean like physical mechanics. A lot of times people refer to games as physical mechanics, as in like hand-eye coordination and stuff. No, Duolingo needs more puzzle mechanics. I need more puzzle mechanics. I need more rules to discover by design, right? I need to intuit more mechanics. It's like I need a Duolingo developer to be cheeky and say, hey, did you see that? Right? Did you see that? I think that's what keeps me so engaged. Like, did you see what we did there? Can you read between the lines? And there are so many ones. Like when you have to fill in 2 blanks, right? I think one of my favorite ones are the 2 blanks. And it only comes up like near halfway through section 2. Where they would put in like ni and de, right? And the two clauses are so similar. And the question is, can you figure out why one is ni and one is de? And sure enough, if you were paying attention enough, you can get this pretty easily. And the idea is you learn the design language of Duo only to then associate why ni is with this particular thing, right? Outside of like doing all the other stuff, like learning the grammar and stuff. But I do learn the grammar afterwards from Kofuku and whatnot. People also overlook it's also a great way to expose students to various ways to read the kanji, and people's brains will may pick up on unspoken rules there. Yeah, a lot of people underestimate the ability for the brain to intuit results. Exactly. People also overlook the fact that humans evolve languages, which is a topic for another time potentially. Yes, and actually it's a super deep topic between the idea of a constructed language based on all the intuition, intellectual properties that people like, right? This isn't a constructed language. The contrast is we are learning a natural language as opposed to a constructed language. Oftentimes, those that come from an analytical and hyper-objective mind tends to treat natural language as a constructed language. So that's also a deep cut as well. So we are naturally inclined to pick up on these things when they are presented in the right way, right?